The warning sirens blared across Earth's orbital defense grid, cutting through the silence of space like a jagged blade. Captain Elias Novak stood motionless at the command center's observation deck, his gaze locked on the shimmering darkness outside. Beyond the atmosphere, hundreds of alien ships materialized, blotting out the stars. The Krillians had arrived. "Status report, Lieutenant," Elias ordered, his voice steady, though a knot of unease tightened in his chest. Lieutenant Sarah Kane glanced at the display panel, her brow furrowed in concentration. "The enemy fleet's closing fast, Captain. No communications. They're not here to negotiate." Elias nodded, his jaw clenched. He had known this day would come, but knowing didn't make it easier. Humanity had long suspected they weren't alone, but they never expected their first contact to be an all-out invasion. Krillians, ruthless, technologically superior, and utterly indifferent to the lives they destroyed, were known throughout the galaxy as conquerors. Earth, with its strategic location and resources, was their next target. "They're making a mistake," Elias muttered, his eyes narrowing as he studied the incoming fleet. "They think we're weak." Sarah turned to him, her voice softer now, but no less urgent. "Our orbital defenses are operational, but they won't hold against an assault of this magnitude. We need to launch the fleet, now." Elias didn't respond immediately. He took a breath, letting the moment settle in his mind. Years of training, preparation, and the knowledge that humanity's survival depended on his next decision weighed heavily on his shoulders. "Order all units to engage. Full offensive. We won't go down without a fight." Sarah tapped her comms unit, relaying the command. The holographic map of the battlefield flared to life as Earth's fleet, small yet formidable, surged forward. Automated defense platforms whirred to life, launching volleys of missiles and kinetic rounds toward the advancing alien ships. The first explosions lit up the sky, brilliant bursts of fire that illuminated the Krillian vessels like dying stars. But for every alien ship they managed to destroy, more seemed to appear. Earth's weapons were powerful, but the Krillian shields absorbed the brunt of the attack with terrifying efficiency. "They're cutting through our defenses," Sarah said, her voice tight. "Our forces are outnumbered. We won't last long at this rate." Elias's grip tightened around the edge of the console. The plan had been sound, the defenses meticulously prepared, but the Krillians were overwhelming them with sheer numbers and superior firepower. He could see the battle slipping away, their efforts nothing more than a desperate attempt to slow the inevitable. But retreat was not an option. "We still have the Reaper squadron," Elias said, his tone hardening. "Prepare them for deployment." Sarah froze, her eyes widening. "The Reapers? But they're untested. If this fails—" "It won't," Elias cut her off, his voice firm. "They're our best shot. Send them in." A beat passed as Sarah processed the weight of his command, but she nodded, understanding that there was no other choice. She relayed the order, her hands shaking slightly as she activated the secret squadron that had been Earth's last hope. Moments later, a small group of black ships detached from the shadows of Earth's moon. Sleek, deadly, and cloaked in the darkest technology humanity had ever created, the Reaper squadron surged toward the enemy with silent ferocity. Elias watched as the Krillian fleet finally reacted, their formation faltering for the first time. It was only a small shift, but it was enough. Humanity wasn't defeated yet. "They won't see us coming," he muttered, the knot in his chest loosening ever so slightly. "Let's hope you're right," Sarah whispered, her gaze fixed on the unfolding battle. As the Reapers closed in on their unsuspecting targets, Elias allowed himself a rare moment of hope. The Krillians had underestimated humanity, and that might just be their downfall. But deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. The cold silence of space was abruptly shattered as the Reaper squadron dove into the Krillian fleet's vulnerable flank, their cloaking technology slipping away like shadows under a spotlight. Black streaks of humanity's deadliest ships weaved through the enemy armada with surgical precision, and within seconds, the void erupted in violent detonations. "Direct hits!" Lieutenant Sarah Kane's voice rang out, barely containing her disbelief. "They're crippling Krillian warships faster than expected." Captain Elias Novak stood by the central console, watching the tactical map in real time. The Reapers were designed for precision, not brute force, but the Krillians hadn't accounted for their superior agility. Watching the alien fleet falter, Elias felt a flicker of satisfaction, but he knew better than to celebrate prematurely. The real test was still ahead. "They won't stay disorganized for long," Elias said, his eyes narrowing. "Prepare for retaliation." Just as the words left his lips, alarms blared, and the screen lit up with new signals. Krillian ships, larger and more heavily armed than the rest, emerged from behind their main line, converging on the Reaper squadron with terrifying speed. "They're countering," Sarah warned, her fingers flying across the control panels. "Heavy-class vessels incoming, powerful enough to tear through our shields in seconds." "Not if we strike first," Elias replied, his mind racing. "Have the Reapers change formation. Divide their attention and target those heavy ships before they close in." Sarah relayed the orders, her voice calm but urgent. The holographic display shifted, showing the Reapers fanning out like a black storm. The squadron executed the new maneuvers flawlessly, splitting into smaller groups that darted between the incoming ships, each one locked on to a specific target. For a few precious moments, the strategy worked. The Krillians hesitated, confused by the Reapers' unpredictability. One of the alien heavy ships erupted in a fireball, debris scattering across the battlefield. Another followed suit, its hull splitting apart as a Reaper missile hit a critical point. But Elias could sense the tide turning once again. The Krillians were beginning to adapt, their ships coordinating with brutal efficiency. A pair of Reapers were caught in the crossfire, their shields flickering before they vanished into fiery wreckage. A third ship struggled to evade pursuit, its sleek frame damaged by sustained laser fire. "We're losing Reapers," Sarah whispered, her voice thick with dread. "Their shields won't hold under this kind of pressure." Elias clenched his fists, his mind working furiously. There had to be a way to turn the tide back in their favor, something the Krillians wouldn't anticipate. His eyes darted to the edge of the battlefield, where Earth's remaining fleet stood ready but distant, too far to intervene directly. "Unless—" "Sarah, how long until our main fleet can enter the fray?" Elias asked, his voice tense. 5 minutes, maybe less," she replied. "But they'll be sitting ducks if the Krillians spot them." "That's why they won't," Elias said, a plan forming in his mind. "Deploy our stealth drones now. Have them launch a false attack vector on the far side of the Krillian fleet. Draw their attention away from the Reapers." Sarah hesitated only a moment before nodding. "On it." As the drones launched from Earth's hidden bases, Elias felt a strange calm wash over him. It was a gamble, a desperate ploy to buy the Reapers enough time to regroup, but it was all they had left. The Krillians, with their massive firepower and relentless precision, might have been superior in technology, but they lacked one crucial edge. They underestimated human ingenuity. "Let's see if they fall for it," Elias muttered, his eyes narrowing as he watched the battlefield shift. Seconds later, the Krillian fleet stirred, their ships diverting toward the decoy attack. And in that moment of hesitation, the Reapers struck again, slicing through the weakened defenses with devastating force. Elias breathed a small sigh of relief. The tide had turned, for now. The momentary calm that followed the decoy maneuver was shattered as Krillian reinforcements warped into the system, emerging from hyperspace like predatory shadows. The tactical display lit up with dozens of new red markers, each one representing another threat to Earth's struggling forces. Captain Elias Novak felt his pulse quicken. The Reapers had bought them time, but it was running out. "They're regrouping," Lieutenant Sarah Kane muttered, her eyes locked on the holographic battlefield. "And they've brought more warships. We can't keep up with this." Elias clenched his jaw, his mind racing. The Krillians weren't just counterattacking, they were adapting to human tactics with terrifying speed. Their larger ships moved into formation, blocking escape routes, while their smaller vessels swarmed like hornets, tightening the noose around the Reapers. "We're getting boxed in," Sarah said, her voice tinged with dread. They'll cut us off from the main fleet if we don't act fast. Elias took a deep breath, forcing himself to focus. There was no room for fear now. He glanced at the tactical map, searching for any weakness in the Krillian formation. His eyes settled on a distant point, an asteroid field that lay just beyond the main battle zone. Head for the asteroid field, he ordered, his voice firm. We'll use it to cover our retreat and regroup. Sarah blinked in surprise. That'll only buy us a few minutes. The Krillians will follow. They will, Elias agreed, a glint of determination in his eyes. But they'll have to go through the debris field first, and that'll slow them down. We can use the time to counter-strike. Without hesitation, Sarah relayed the order. The Reaper squadron shifted course, engines flaring as they raced toward the jagged expanse of rocks and ice. Behind them, the Krillian ships surged forward, closing the distance with frightening speed. The transition into the asteroid field was brutal. Massive chunks of rock floated through the void, their surfaces pitted and scarred from centuries of cosmic collisions. The Reapers, with their superior maneuverability, darted between the debris, their black hulls blending into the shadows. But the Krillians were less agile. Several of their smaller ships slammed into asteroids, exploding in brief flashes of light. We're losing them in the field, Sarah said, a hint of relief in her voice. For now, Elias replied, not letting his guard down. But they'll adapt. They always do. Suddenly, a sharp jolt rocked the command deck, and alarms blared across the control panels. Sarah's hands flew over the console, trying to stabilize the ship. Direct hit from one of their long-range cannons, she shouted, panic creeping into her voice. Shields are down to 20%. Elias gritted his teeth. The Krillians were already adjusting, using their heavier ships to fire through the gaps in the asteroid field. One more hit, and they'd be defenseless. Divert all power to the forward shields, Elias ordered. We'll draw their fire while the rest of the Reapers strike from behind. Sarah hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Understood. The ship groaned under the strain as the remaining energy was funneled into the shields. Elias watched the tactical map as the Krillian fleet advanced. He could feel the weight of every decision, the lives of his crew hanging in the balance. Then, through the static of the comms, a voice crackled to life. This is Commander Vares of the Icarus. Reinforcements have arrived. Hold your position, Captain. We'll cover you. Elias's heart skipped a beat. The Icarus was the flagship of Earth's hidden fleet, a heavily armored battleship designed to turn the tide of any battle. Relief washed over him, but he knew they weren't safe yet. Sarah, Elias said, his voice steady once again. Tell the Reapers to prepare for the final strike. It's now or never. As the massive shape of the Icarus loomed on the horizon, Elias felt a surge of hope. The Krillians may have had the numbers, but Earth's ingenuity, and its people, had always been its greatest strength. And now, it was time to prove it. The Icarus cut through the void like a predator, its sleek, obsidian hull reflecting distant starlight. Captain Elias Novak watched its approach on the tactical display, relief mingling with a growing sense of urgency. Reinforcements had arrived, but the battle was far from over. Commander Vares, Elias hailed, his voice steady. We're pinned down. Krillians have blocked all escape routes. We see them. Vares's deep voice crackled through the comms. Hold your position. We'll punch a hole in their line, but you need to be ready to strike once we engage. Elias nodded, even though Vares couldn't see him. Acknowledged. Reapers, prepare to move. The Reaper squadron had taken heavy damage, and their ships limped through the asteroid field, hidden from view for now. But the moment they broke cover, they'd be vulnerable again. Elias needed Vares to succeed, or they'd be outflanked and slaughtered. Sarah Kane's hands danced across the console as she rerouted power to critical systems. Shields at 30%, she reported. We can't take much more of this, Captain. We won't have to, Elias replied, his gaze fixed on the tactical map. Vares will clear the way. Outside, the Icarus unleashed its firepower. A barrage of energy beams and torpedoes erupted from its side cannons, streaking toward the Krillian blockade. The alien ships scrambled to respond, their formations breaking apart as they tried to regroup. "Look at that," Sarah murmured, awe creeping into her voice. "The Icarus is tearing them apart." Elias didn't answer. His eyes narrowed, watching the Krillians carefully. They weren't retreating. Instead, the larger vessels were pulling back, creating a gap, but not out of desperation. It felt deliberate, like they were drawing the humans in. "Something's wrong," Elias muttered, his instincts screaming at him. "Varys, pull back! It's a trap!" The comms crackled with interference, Varys' voice distorted but clear enough. "We see it, Captain, but it's too late. We're committed. You need to strike now or we lose this window." Elias's heart raced. He was out of time. The Icarus had already closed the distance, and now the Krillians were springing their trap. Several enemy capital ships decloaked around Varys' fleet, their weapons charging. "Lieutenant Kane," Elias said sharply, "divert everything to engines. Full speed toward the Krillian command vessel. We're taking it out." Sarah's eyes widened. "You're sending us straight into the heart of their fleet." "Exactly," Elias said, his jaws set. "They won't expect us to charge. If we hit their command ship, we might disrupt their coordination long enough for Varys to escape." There was no time for argument. Sarah executed the command, and the Reapers surged forward, leaving the safety of the asteroid field behind. The Krillians were caught off guard, their formation faltering as the human ships plunged into the heart of their fleet. "Focus all fire on the command ship," Elias barked. "We take it out, and this ends now." The Icarus continued its assault, but now Krillian ships were closing in from all sides, their weapons bearing down on Varys' fleet. Explosions blossomed in the distance as ships on both sides were torn apart by the brutal exchange of fire. The Reapers dodged incoming fire, weaving between enemy vessels. The Krillian command ship loomed ahead, its massive hull bristling with weaponry. "We're in range," Sarah said, her voice tight with tension. "Fire everything we've got," Elias ordered. A volley of missiles and energy blasts streaked toward the Krillian ship, slamming into its shields. The enemy vessel shuddered, its defenses flickering. "Direct hit," Sarah reported. "But their shields are still holding." "We hit them again," Elias said, determination hardening his voice. "We don't stop until that ship is dust." As the Reapers prepared for another strike, the Krillian fleet shifted, their capital ships moving to encircle the humans. The tension in the cockpit was palpable. Elias knew they were running out of time. Victory, or annihilation, was seconds away.